Hi, and welcome to Season 2 of the Team Deakins Podcast, a collection of informal conversations between Roger and James Deakins and a guest. We never know where the conversation will take us, so listen in and see where it goes. Today we're speaking with the director and writer. His credits include The Blind Side, Saving Mr. Banks, The Highwaymen, and Mr. Harrigan's Phone. We're pleased to welcome John Lee Hancock. John, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's you guys do one of my favorite podcasts, and I don't know. No, it's an honor. How about that? I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, leave it at that, please.
Well, our first question is always, how did you get to where you are today? Is this something you always wanted to do, or did you take another path? And we happen to know you did take another path. So we're really curious.
Yeah.
What happened?
I read you worked in your grandfather's pipe fabrication shop at one point. So it seems a long career journey.
So do tell.
I will. And if I start to get too long-winded, you can just wave at me and I'll tail off. I was raised, I'm from a town in Texas called Texas City, Texas, which is not the most original name for a city in Texas, but there it is nonetheless.
You know where you are, though.
You know what? You can get as drunk as you want and you can get home. So, and
good thing.
Yeah. And it's a refinery town down near Galveston. It's, very middle class. Both my parents were public school teachers. I grew up always kind of harboring a secret. And my secret was that I was a writer. I liked to write. Even from fourth grade on, I would write a short story every day and not show them to anyone because I didn't know anyone who was a writer, whose parents or grandparents were writers or in the entertainment business in any way. I knew someone from a neighboring town whose father had been to the moon, literally been to the moon. So it was a far more viable career option for me to think about going to the moon than it was to ever write something for the entertainment business. So
What a choice.
Yes, I kept that up. And then I told everybody, because I didn't dare tell anyone that I wanted to be a writer. And so when adults would ask, I would usually say, I'm going to be a brain surgeon, which shut them right down. I mean, they went, oh, good for you. Fantastic. Good. And there were no more questions then. And so I went to Baylor University and in undergrad started off as pre-med to become a brain surgeon. And about a semester in, I was taking also a literature class, a freshman literature class, and loving that, absolutely loving it because I love to read and things like that. And then just struggling with like organic chemistry. And I said, why am I, swimming upstream when there's a perfectly nice downstream I can drift on and enjoy? So I crossed the street and got an English literature major. And then about my junior year at university, I thought, gosh, what am I going to do with this? It's not exactly vocational. Am I going to write? And I said, gosh, I don't know anyone who's a writer. And I think it's probably kind of tough to make a living at short fiction. And I'm not sure I'm a capable teacher. So I applied to law school. And
as you do.
Yeah. Which is this dumbest idea of all time, because it's like, well, that will buy me 3 years to figure this out. One, it's a very expensive proposition to buy time. It's expensive time you're purchasing. And the other thing is, it's friggin' hard. Law school's hard. And so, but nonetheless, I went to law school. And then when I graduated law school, and there were some classes in law that I really loved and other ones that bored me to tears, but I got through it. And then people said, well, you spent all this money in loans and things like that. And my parents, who graciously, supported me, maybe you should try to practice law just to see, you might like it. I mean, it's a good job. And I went, you know what, that's probably sensible. So I took a job in Houston, Texas, working for a firm that wasn't a big firm, not a small firm, medium size. And it was a really good firm. And I liked all the lawyers and the partners there. So I practiced law there for about 3 years. And I thought, because I just continued to write and had fallen in love with movies late, really, honestly, probably. I mean, I went to movies growing up in junior high and high school, but it wasn't until I went to college that I really fell in love with finding older movies and things like that, that the cinema club at the university and things like that, where you get to watch stuff that just blew your mind and you just got excited about it and wanted to talk about it all night long. So there weren't any books on how to write a screenplay back then. Now you can go into a library and they got a whole section, of them. So I fought and cobbled out a plan to get my hands on screenplays, and found a few that I could get somebody to mail me that was Xeroxed and had coffee stains on it or whatever. And I would hold them like they were the Holy Grail, and I would read them and learn from them. And so taught myself to the format. And this was before Final Draft and things like that, but taught myself the format, got a computer friend of mine to help me input the tabs. And I started writing screenplays. I was writing plays and screenplays because I like theater a lot as well. Then what happened was, and this is it's one of those little things that where you go, this wouldn't have happened but for this and this and this and this. And I think we've all got several of those in our past. And one for me was Sundance Institute was very young, and they were just starting to have these things called satellite programs. They wanted to go beyond Utah. And Bob Redford had an idea of like Texas at the time. Austin, Texas was it was kind of great in terms of there were some independent filmmakers there. I mean, there's a whole new wave of them with Rodriguez and Linklater and people like that have come after. But Eagle Pinnell and these guys making these little tiny movies there. And and Austin's a very artistic kind of place anyway. And so Redford had the idea to have a 4-day seminar kind of thing in Austin. And there were lots of different, Bill Whitloff was coming. Can't remember who else. John Sayles was coming, and they were going to talk to all these different people. And you'd pay a fee to come and listen to all these people talk and things like that. But in addition to that, they were having a screenplay lab that they were putting together, and they were going to select 6 or 8 people from scripts that you sent them to have a 4-day intensive thing with a guy named Franzik Daniel. And he had been the head of at the time was he at USC, but he had been the head of the Columbia Film School, USC Film School. And my understanding was that he was like Roman Polanski's film teacher in Poland or something. Anyway, he had tons of experience, and it was a crotchety older gentleman, which I'm fast becoming as well, by the way. So
it happens.
And they said, send a query letter telling us what your script's about. I'd written one script, and and looking back at it now, it's terrible. And everybody writes their first script about themselves. They swear it's not about themselves, but it always is at some point, because you're at that age too, where it's like an existential crisis you're going through, especially with me. Where do I belong in the world? What am I going to do with my life? That kind of thing. And it's just all so angsty and important, and it doesn't play as either. But anyway, so I'd written the script and I sent them a query letter, and they said, okay, now the next step is send any 10 consecutive pages. I thought that's an odd request, because then you go through and you go, don't send the first 10, but which 10 do you send? So at some point I sent 10, and then they asked for the whole script. And then lo and behold, I got it. And everybody there had kind of made a film before, things like that. And Frank Daniel proceeded to rip us to shreds. I mean, no, but I mean, in the best way possible, I have to say. He had read every script and thought about it and made notes. And so it's like when, here we were on Saturday morning, and it was John's time in the barrel. For the next 3 hours, I'm going to go page by page and tell you what's wrong. And it was great. And at the end of it, we all watched Chinatown with him, with stopping and starting and pointing out, this is foreshadowing, this is this kind of thing. And it was magnificent. It was an entry into a world I didn't know existed. And I came away from it thinking, I'm going to be optimistic about this. And I said, here's the best I can do. I'm not without talent, because I made it into this room.
Right.
But I have a lot to learn, and I have to get a lot better. So I proceeded to think of this as a positive thing, and decided that I was going to move to Los Angeles and try to become a screenwriter, even though I didn't know anyone in Los Angeles. And so I gave I gave 6 months notice at my law firm, and they were all really great, and basically said, we know you're going to be back and you're welcome. You know, you're going to go out there and fail and come back and practice law. We'll be happy to have you back. And I moved out and, you know, like everybody else, it's not an original story, but starved to death, did PA work, mostly on commercials because I could work for 2 weeks and then have 2 weeks off to write. And I had, and then you have people, producers, commercials, and I could call them and go, I've got rent due in a week. Do you have anything? And they would say, come on in. You know, come to the office. We got something starting in a couple of weeks. You can, okay, thank you. That kind of thing. And I had a theater company that really, that sounds kind of fancier than it was, because it was basically just me writing for a bunch of actor friends of mine. And we were all, none of us were working necessarily, but not without talent, each of us. So I would write for them specifically. And the other thing was, there was a theater, because we had no money, none of us. We found a theater that was such a shitty theater that no one would ever put a production on in it. It was in a bad part of Hollywood where your car was definitely going to be broken into if you went to a show there. And it had two supporting pillars, weight supporting pillars that were right in the middle of the stage. So you had to not only write, I was writing not only to the strengths and weaknesses of actors that were friends of mine, but also to these pillars. So I had to write to these pillars. And so I did one play there, which I said, I'm going to set it all, but make it as a continuous one act that's like an hour and 20 minutes. And it's set in LA County Jail. So those are kind of parts of the other next cells. And, you know, you play with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was one of these little plays that we did, and we had a lot of fun with it. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, people heard about it, and the LA Times came out and reviewed it, which was unheard of for this little tiny play in a bad theater. You know, it got a good review, and then I had a theatrical agent, and then I was a pocket client of Rhonda Gomez, who was at Triad at the time, and that was an agency that then folded into William Morris, et cetera. And they had a big, anyway, they were one of the big four agencies back in the day. And Rhonda she was known to have very good taste and peculiar taste, and was known because nobody at the agency would sign me, because she would give them a script, and it was a bunch of young dudes going, we can't sell this unless it's Die Hard or quippy action kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And I was writing 70s movies, so they wasn't really in vogue. And so, you know, they would say no, and she would say, well, you're my pocket client then. I said, I don't know what that is, but she would take me to breakfast once a month, and she would ask what I was writing. And she said, let me read anything you write. And she would have us over for dinner. I say us because there were 3 of us that were all pocket clients that the agency would not sign. And they thought she was crazy. And she would have us over for dinner, and she would cook for us. And every one of us would be saying, I'm not sure this is going to work. And one in particular said, I'm moving back to Virginia. That was Vince Gilligan. It was Vince Gilligan, Nicole Holofcener, who's had an amazing career in independent films, and myself. So all 3 of us have done fine, but she just goes, guys, just hang on. It's going to happen. I promise. We're like, yeah, right. Thanks for the meal, Rhonda. And anyway, and yes, I did work in my granddad's pipe fitting place. I did work on a ranch, which was not nearly as glamorous as one might think. So a lot of, when you went to those motels and stuff in old country, that's my stomping grounds. I've been to all those places.
So when you were beginning to write, discovered you wanted to write, who were you? What were you inspired by? And then you mentioned you were writing 70s films. I mean, talk about that. What 70s films inspired you?
Oh boy. Well, I actually named my company after a line of dialogue from a character in Badlands. So Terry's, first 2 movies, and like everybody else, I mean, I don't know. It's just, gosh, The French Connection, and I just loved everything that came, even if I didn't understand it, or even if I didn't like it, I loved it regardless. Because also I think there's kind of like, it's the same with music, I think. Like when you come of age with movies, it's like something important is happening to you inside that stirs you. And and so those movies kind of print on your DNA in a way.
Yes.
Not unlike music. I mean, you go going through something and music of that time imprints on you in a strange way, and you can't kind of lose that stink a little bit. So yes, it was all that. But I mean, mostly also, I would say that my favorite writer, probably still to this day, I would say I still read her, is Flannery O'Connor. And I felt her voice kind of very strongly. And I guess some people might say I ripped her off, but I prefer to call it homage. With when I wrote A Perfect World, which was a spec script that got me Rhonda as a real agent, and then a movie getting made, and often running from there.
Were you very much involved in the movie? Were you on set? Were you
Yeah. I didn't go to film school because I'd already been to law school and figured I was old enough to, go, I can't afford to have another degree. And even though I would have loved, I think, the esprit de corps and the positive competition of a film school, because I kind of thrive in that kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I just thought like I've spun my wheels enough with education, and I'm already writing, so I'm going to stick with this and see what happens. But Clint Eastwood was my film school. Doing 2 movies with Clint, and Clint had never really had writers on the set before because he always viewed them as kind of too precious about their words and slowing him down. And but we got along, and I asked him, and Mark Johnson, who produced A Perfect World, and he was a friend of all of ours, went to bat for me and said, John wants to come to the set. Someday he wants to direct. And Clint said, yeah, okay. And the next thing I know, I'm on the set of the first movie I had that got bought, and we're shooting in Texas, where I'm from. And I've got 2 Academy Award winning directors on the set with me, with Clint and Kevin Costner. And Kevin was the biggest movie star in the world at the time. So all this was, and it's, as is always the case, it's never as easy as the first one. All of a sudden you go, this is how it is. Yeah. This is fantastic. Yep. You just get you get the biggest star in the world, and we're starting shooting in 6 months, and and no. But they were both very, very kind to me, and I was there, and I could ask Clint. I mean, you'd get different answers from Clint and Kevin about questions. Clint, who's a man of few words, would have one sentence, not because he wasn't interested in helping you. It's just he would just kind of reduce it all down and titrate it to one sentence. You go, I kind of get that, yeah. And Kevin would go on and on and on about it in the best way possible. In fact, Kevin, one time before we started shooting, he told me, he goes, you write like a director. And I said, that's not necessarily a compliment. And he said, no, he said, it's visual. And I feel the places when you write without you spending a whole lot of time describing stuff. It's just, there's a visual flavor to it that is helpful to an actor who's trying to think about being there when they're reading words on a page. You should direct this movie. And I said, we've already got this guy Eastwood, and he just won an Academy Award. I think we should stick with him. And Kevin said, no, you should prepare to direct this movie. And he said, you wrote the scenes, the schedule, make yourself a shot list or whatever you would do if you were directing, and prepare each day to come in as if you're directing. And then watch what Clint does, watch what happens. And then we're going to go to dailies at night, and we're going to watch from 2 days ago. And he said, I think you should do that. And he said, in addition to that, if you want, in the mornings when you come in, when I'm in makeup, you can come and run through your list with me, which was incredibly generous. And so I would come in, and I would say, I would start to talk, and I realized pretty quickly that I was somewhere between Kevin and Clint in terms of my taste, in terms of, Clint, Kevin would say, you've got to get this. And I would think I got that. Clint would go, we don't need any of this, Yeah. So, but, and then coming in with my plan, and then seeing Clint do it, it was really, really wise advice and counsel from Kevin. So that was my film school, and it was magnificent.
It's interesting how different they are. I've never worked with either of them as directors, but Clint is renowned for doing 1 take, maybe 2, and Kevin is kind of the reverse.
Yes. And you can see, and they got along fine, but you could see that rub sometimes, a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did they change the script in any way during the shooting?
It's, again, this will never happen again. When
Yeah. Really.
Clint read the script, really liked it. He told me when we met with him, originally Steven Spielberg had heard that Mark had optioned it. And then all of a sudden, when it went out and people read it, I had tons of meetings set up. No one wanted to do it or option it, but they said, we've got books. You're a really good writer. It's a 70s movie. No one's ever going to make it. So
oh wow.
Yeah.
So it's it's got that anti-hero vibe and all that kind of thing happening. But then Mark optioned it, and Steven Spielberg heard about it and said, Mark, I hear you got this great script. How come you haven't sent it to me? And Mark said, well, I think it's a little, he goes, well, I don't know. He goes, I'd love for you to read it, Steven. I think it has a little Sugarland Express in it. So I didn't know if you would be wanting to go back to that or not. And he said, let me be the judge. So Steven read it, and Mark called me and said, what are you doing on Saturday? You want to go to lunch? And I said, yes. My option check hadn't come in yet. So I was still starting and doing PA work. And so if somebody was offering lunch, I'm in. I don't care what. Yes,
right.
Yes. And we went to Steven's house for lunch. And Steven said, I really want to direct this movie. You and I can sit down for a couple of weeks and go through it. The only problem is I can't commit to it right now. In a week, I'm going to know whether ILM is going to be finished with what they're preparing for my next movie, which is a big thing. I know they're not going to be ready, and they're going to push, and we'll do this, and then I'll do that movie. He said, but I don't want to say yes and then no, and then yes and then no. He said, so let me let you know in a week. Then he called and said, ILM's ready, and I can't, Universal has so much money invested in this movie already that I can't hold everybody up. So, and it was Jurassic Park.
All right.
He was going off to do. And it could have become, this is where Steven did me a real solid. And I told him this. It could have easily become, Steven flirted with it for a moment and then thought better of doing it, which is negative, kind of, right?
Right.
Instead, Steven let it be known that this was a script that I desperately wanted to do and couldn't because of schedule, which is really, it's very, very kind of him to phrase it that way. Clint Eastwood jumped in, had read the script as a writing sample for a book that Warner Brothers had that he wanted to do that never got done. And he read the sample and he said, forget about the book. What's happening with this script? And they said, well, Steven Spielberg kind of has it right now. He said, well, let me know if anything changes. This was before Unforgiven. So Clint wasn't the Clint he was about to become.
Right.
I'll say that, and so I went in for a meeting with him and he said all the right things. He kind of got it. And he said, this reminds me of Lonely Are the Brave, the Kirk Douglas movie. And I went, wow, he does get this. So, because I love that movie.
It seems like it's like a coincidence of circumstances, because it would have been a very different movie if Steven Spielberg had directed it, wouldn't it?
No doubt.
I think Clint really worked so well with it. It's one of our favorite movies.
Well, I think it's his best movie. I mean, other than maybe Outlaw Josie Wales. And
you have to do a lot of the work. I mean, it's not just fed to you, which is what makes it such a great movie. And so definitely, I think
it is a perfect movie. Yeah. I mean,
no, that's so kind.
What would you have done differently if you had directed it? Is there anything you'd have done differently?
No, probably at the time, yes, slightly, but it wouldn't have been as good, I think. You always look back. I'm sure everyone does this. And you go, I would do that differently today. But it may not be better. You might just go, I would probably do it differently because every day lived is a new experience and you bring something else with you. Sometimes I look back at some scripts like that and I go, I'm not sure that I would have the guts to write some of the things that I wrote in there. Because at the time, I didn't have an agent. I was writing and people would read it and they go, this is, friends of mine would read it and go, this is great. You should take out the sharecropper scene because it's too volatile, that no one's, and I just went, well, nobody, I don't have an agent anyway. Nobody's making this movie. It's a writing sample. So why not just do what I think is best and write it like I think Flannery O'Connor would,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's smart.
back to your original question, though, it was one that, yes, Kevin came in, Clint was going off to do In the Line of Fire with Wolfgang Peterson directing before he directed this one. And he said, and Kevin got involved. Kevin wanted to play the role. And Kevin had, he wanted to sit with me and go through it. And Clint said, yeah, you guys do your thing. I'm off doing this movie. And so I went every day to Kevin's office, and I thought, I steeled myself because I thought, he's the all-American boy. Everybody loves Kevin Costner. And he's got this guy named Butch Haynes who, yeah, I mean, he take his cookie, he'll punch you. He's not really lovable. And I thought he's going to try to soften this. And so I girded myself to fight back. And for this, he said, I don't want to touch Butch. He goes, I want to build up the Texas Ranger role because when I was a little kid, I always dreamed that someday I would be on a movie poster with Clint Eastwood. And at the time, Clint was not going to play it. He said, I'll get Bobby Duvall to play the Texas Ranger and I'll just direct. And so Kevin was pushing Clint to do it, and we made the role a little bigger. We may have made it too big by, a little bit. I don't know. And there's some stuff that's a little hijinksy in it that that's kind of like laughter. I mean, I don't know. It's look, all in all, how lucky am I?
Yeah.
How lucky am I?
Yeah. So where did the idea come from? Is it something that came from you being in law firm? Was it a case or something?
It was funny you should ask, because stories come from strange places. I didn't have an agent. I was just writing. And so I had a bundle of different ideas. One was when I was a kid in Texas City, there was another kid in Texas City that was kidnapped in the morning. People had escaped from Huntsville prison and were on the run and were looking for a car, and there was a light on, and they ended up taking a kid hostage. And it was terrifying when you're in that town. This happened in our town. This is unbelievable. And so and then there's nothing else in common with the story after that, but just the idea of getting snatched. The other thing, there were three things I was interested in doing. That was one. I was trying to figure that one out. The other one was, I was born in a town called Longview, Texas, which is in East Texas near the Louisiana border. And we had a field next to our house, not like you think about Kansas wheat field or anything like that. No, this was grungy with an old oak tree and beat to hell. And there were crazy people over hanging out there and living there and stuff. Anyway, we didn't really have enough money to get Halloween costumes when we were little kids. And I'm the oldest of four, at any rate. So my mom would, oh, you're going to be a pirate. And she would, paint the mustache on you or something kind of thing, right? Or, oh, you're a ghost. And it's the old sheep. You go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But one year we got store-bought costumes. And my brother Joe, who's the next below me, wanted Casper the Friendly Ghost. And so he was probably 5 or 6. I don't know when he got it. And he wore it every single day. And then all the way through the holidays, and then in Texas, it gets hot early and into the spring. And he said he wouldn't take it off. My mom just cut off the sleeves and made the pants short pants so he could continue to do it. And he would go off, and he was the kid who would go off and play by himself. Like, I'm going to go in the field and be Casper. And you'd see this little ghost running around out there in the field and go, the kid's lost his mind. But there was something provocative about the image, and I didn't know why. I just said, I just like the idea of a little boy in a Casper the Friendly Ghost outfit in a field. And then the third thing was, Texas is an interesting place for so many reasons, and some good, many bad, whatever. But it comes from the DNA of the place being its own country. It's the only state that was its own country. You can still go to the French embassy in Austin and things like that. So they're very prideful about that, boastful, some might say. But what happened when Kennedy was assassinated, and I was in first grade, what happened when Kennedy was assassinated, that it happened in Dallas, knocked Texas to its knees. It's like, how could this happen in Texas? And so I had a character in mind who's a longtime Law and Order guy, Texas Ranger, who I said, I just want to write something that happens right before it, but I want my Texas Ranger to be old enough to go. I mean, I already knew the last line of that story was going to be, I don't know nothing, not one damn thing, which the older I get and people have, everybody's got, when I was 25, I knew everything, and the older I get, I just know nothing. I'm interested.
Yeah.
I'm probably more interested in everything, but I don't know anything for a fact. I've got opinions sometimes, but anyway, so those 3 stories, I just kept working on them, and a little by little, they kind of morphed together over the course of note taking for a year. And then when it hit, I wrote it very quickly, and then went in and did some stuff with Kevin, and so we had white pages that went to, we're going to go make this movie, and they stayed white the whole time.
Wow.
That's fantastic. No wonder it's so good.
It's interesting, though, because in the States, it wasn't like a big hit or anything. It was abroad that it did really well. It did really well in Europe, and now it is considered one of Eastwood's, if not his best movie.
But it's also one of those movies that you can see again and again and see something.
Yeah.
It grow. You see more and more and more in it, which to me is a definition of a good movie.
Oh, thanks. It is true that it didn't do any business in the States, but it was funny because I found myself for several years after getting invitations to please come to France and speak, because they loved the movie. And it was like, and you'd find yourself in Paris and you'd walk into there's that great, near the Rodin Museum, there's that great, it's the old movie posters and sheets and the paintings and all that stuff, that shop. And I remember going in there, and it's a prickly French guy who's kind of, what are you looking for, kind of thing. And I asked him if he had, an oversized Un Monde Parfait. And he was like, well, yeah, of course we do. And, he pulled it out. I go, oh, and I pointed, I go, that's me. That's me. It's my... It was like he wanted to close the shop and have a coffee, So it was right. But to your point, it did very well in Europe. I think it was like #1 at the box office in France for 8 straight weeks or something, and nobody had heard of it in America. But anyway, it's all good.
So what happened after that movie?
At that point, I was kind of off and rolling with things I took on. I probably took on things that I probably should have been a little more realistic about, because you'd have somebody, a producer, who options a book that is really awesome. And you go, I really want to write this, but I didn't know what the marketplace was like. And I'm not saying that the marketplace should ever rule your decision, but you don't want to make a movie just for yourself. I mean, you want to think there's a couple other people that might want to watch it too. So I took a couple of projects that I dearly love writing, that probably never had a chance, that I probably should have looked at it slightly differently. But I've never been, I don't know, I've always been like totally focused on one thing at a time. And I don't think I'm talented enough to bicycle lots of things. And, I'm not J.J. Abrams who could have 19 things going on. I would fail miserably at all of them. I need one thing to dedicate myself to, because I need every bit of gray matter focused on that.
Then you sold a couple, right? But when did you get into directing?
Well, I kind of had...
or how?
Yeah, that's another... It brings us back to Mark Johnson. I had, had movies made. I had gone in and pitched ideas and had movies set up, and I'd written scripts. And by that time, I was never writing to direct. It was never like, I'll start with writing and then I'll become a director. I honestly loved writing. And I thought, if I never direct, that's okay too, because I love this, what I'm doing. That said, I was interested in it and intrigued by it. And I loved my time on the set with Clint. So I said, I'm not in a hurry to do it, but I'd like to do it at some point. And Mark Johnson knew this. And Mark, there was a movie that I had written. I adapted a book that was about a bombing that took place at the University of Wisconsin in 1970. It was an anti-war kind of thing. And it was a fascinating case and stuff that I was interested in that nobody else was. Anyway, but I was attached to, I wrote it. I think the script's very good, but it's me. But I was attached to direct it. And we were kind of going down the road a little bit with it. And Mark Johnson called me and he said, would you read something for me? And I said, yeah, of course. He said, look, it's a Texas story, a true story. It's a Texas story. And it's written by a guy from Portland, Oregon. And so and Mark grew up in Spain. He goes, I have the wrong lens to look at this particular story through, but I know somebody, and that's you, who's a Texan, who will tell me if it's right or wrong or it's phony or not. I said, yeah, sure. So I read it and really loved what Mike Rich had done with the script. I said, I don't care that he's from Portland, Oregon. He spent time there and he's taken the time to know these people and how they talk in West Texas. And he's captured it well. He's really talented. And anyway, I told Mark, yeah, it's a great script. He goes, you know what? We're looking for a director, and we've interviewed 3 or 4 directors. It's at Disney. It's set up at Disney. And there was a strike looming too, and that, it was going to happen maybe or whatever. He said, you've proven that you can go into a room as a writer and pitch an idea and get them to pay you to write a script. You have no experience going in and pitching yourself as a director. He said, you should do this just for practice. I'm going to tell you, you're not getting the job because it's at a very specific budget. It's at $20,500,000, and it's this number of days. And they want someone who's directed before because they don't want to spend a penny more because there's no international on sports movies. So it's very specific. And he said, so they're not going to hire you, but you should go in and pitch yourself. And I said, you know what? That sounds really smart, and I'll have fun with it. I'm not getting the job anyway. So I go into Disney, and there's a round table full of executives and stuff. And I tell them, one, whoever you get to direct this, don't let them mess with the script too much. It's really good. I mean, somebody's going to come in and say they know Texas because they had an hour layover at DFW airport. And it's not the case. There are lots of smarty pants out there that would put their hands in this and muck it up. It's pretty damn good. So I'm just saying. And then I proceeded to tell them, and they would ask questions, and I would tell them, and I said, like I said, I'm not getting the job anyway. So I said, in the third act, I would switch to Fujifilm because I wanted to look like this and the spectacle of Oz and the stadium and everything else. And the movie was The Rookie. Anyway, so I talked for an hour and had a blast just talking about what I would like to do filmically with it and kind of how I wanted it, more importantly, kind of how I wanted it to feel and how I wanted the landscape and everything else to be a character in it. And I just didn't want it to be kind of too cutty. I wanted it to have like, this is going to sound like these are at odds, but a fervent, laconic attitude about it. Like we're going somewhere, but the pace is perfect for West Texas. And anyway, so I left and was like, that was fun. And I got in my truck. And was driving home, and Mark Johnson, this call from Mark Johnson. So I answer, and I said, hey, that was fun. Thanks for that. He goes, well, I hope you were serious about what you were saying in the room because you just got the job. And I said, what? He goes, no. He said that Nina Jacobson, who was the head of production at that time, had said at the end of it, she goes, this is not the decision I should make if I were being careful about my job. But I think it's pretty obvious who we should hire, and it's this guy. He has a love for this. Everybody else is going, well, yes, we can do it. And here's how we're going to do it. And then we can get it done before the strike. And it was a piece of business. So some other directors who come in, who, by the way, were very good directors. I was amazed when I heard the names. But they said, we should give it to this guy and take a chance. And so I had to come home, and I was like, wow, I hadn't even told my wife, who was pregnant with twins at the time. I hadn't mentioned it to her. I go, I think I'm directing a movie. And she goes, Rads, which was the book I adapted. I go, no, it's called The Rookie. And she goes, I've never heard of this. And I said, I know, I didn't tell you because it wasn't real, but it kind of just became real. And so I realized, and I called Mark and I go, I can't say yes until Holly agrees to it because she's out to here. I mean, it's kind of not the best time to leave. I mean, obviously I was going to be around for the birth of the kids and everything, but it was the middle of a whole bunch of stuff. Anyway, so she read it and she said, it's lovely. I know why you want to do it. You should do this. And so then I called Mark back and said, yes, I'm doing it. And then I started meeting with people and met with John Schwartzman, who, I'm here in Munich with, and you guys know. And
right.
And that was a fun adventure that we've continued to this day.
Wow. Was it daunting though when
Must
you?
have been
I mean,
terrifying.
you weren't expecting to get the job, and then somebody says, and it's quite a big movie, right? It's quite a responsibility.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
Yeah.
at first it's like, great, but it was helpful it was helpful that I had success a little older, as
Yeah.
opposed to,
Yeah.
I wasn't a kid. And also I had worked on movie sets. I had hauled forward cable all over the wharfs of San Francisco for Alan Davio. I had done all these jobs, and liked film sets. And so I wasn't afraid that it wasn't going to be familiar. Like everybody else, I have, you always have, you second guess yourself. You have imposter syndrome a little bit, and you try to fake it a bit. And I thought, you know what? The only way I can do this is to be authentic, which means I'm probably going to be the director that at times is going to say, I don't know the answer, but let me get back to you.
Yeah.
Or
Smart.
how do you want to do this? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know yet. I'm thinking about it. Let's talk about it. And so that was, I didn't know anything. So having that approach actually made people want to help me and want to engage. And then I said, I have strong ideas. When it comes to it, I go, no, and now I feel this in my gut. And I kind of, so I lucked into that approach, which fits with my personality. And it's a little from the Clint Eastwood world of, I don't like a bunch of screaming and running on a set. I like people working hard. I like people being kind to one another. Clint's thing was, on the set, he was like, I don't want to see anybody running. He goes, they don't run in hospitals and they're saving lives. We're making a movie. We can all work very hard and very smart and be nice to each other. And so that was like the bare minimum. And for me, I don't know, it worked. And so my first day on the set, I realized that there were on my crew in Austin, because there were so many young filmmakers there. There were 7 people who had directed a movie before, and I had on the crew. And for one reason or another, they were all really supportive of me, as opposed to going, how come this guy got this opportunity?
Yeah. That's great.
What did you do in prep? Did you even know what you should be doing in prep? And did you?
Yeah, what's it generally your process? I mean,
how has it changed over the years?
I try to, I mean, in some ways it's changed. In some ways it stayed the same, which is I kind of try to keep, as long as I can, a childlike innocence about it. I mean, there's lots of stuff that has to get done, and you are scheduled in prep, boom, 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 boom. And I just, you try to be honest about things. I have to push back my people pleaser a little bit, because I can be that person when you're scouting and you go, yeah, that's pretty good. And you go home at night and you go, but it's not quite good enough. We've got to push harder there. We've got to push harder there. So I've had to take my people pleaser and put it on the side. Now I can still be kind to people and appreciate their work and say, I know this is a hard one to find. Here, let me help you, give you more ideas, and then you keep going. And you find it. You just have to push harder. But generally, I like how the process, because I like writing too. I like it. You go from writing in a room by yourself, and then you're doing a movie, and all of it, and then you add people all the way up, and then you have, all of a sudden you're at day one, and you've got all these trucks and all these people, and everybody's looking at you. And you can't get out action, out of your throat. And then you finish production, and then you're weaned off of that in post. There are fewer people working on it, and then and then you're back. So it's just this bell curve of who's surrounding you by. And also, I have to say that even though I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm not shy, but I'm certainly an introvert. That I can convince myself to become performative, which in some ways is exhausting, because I want to be
very much.
And I'm not talking about, wearing jodhpurs and having a whip and saying, here's what we're doing, but kind of making sure that esprit de corps and everybody's on the same page. And just, and then also being able to do that, but then having to focus on what's happening through the lens. What are the actors doing? How can I help? Because that is a very internal kind of thing. It's like the world has to go away for that to work when you're watching that happen. And you can't spend too much time on one or the other. You have to blend them both. But I love every bit of the process.
Do you think in prep, are you thinking shots, or do you wait till the day to think what the shots might be?
I every step of the way, like right now, we're a couple of months out, and I've seen a lot of the locations. So when I'm writing it, I can't help but, even though I don't write it to shoot, I write like I'm not shooting it. I write like I want to put the best story on the page. I don't think about anything like that. Or, oh, this will be hard. This will take an extra half. I don't think about that at all. But when you're writing, you're visually already playing it in your head. But so and so now I'm at the stage, which is fun, because when I'm going around, I scouted it first, and then John came over, Schwartzman, and he was here in Munich, and I could show him the places that I had found that I thought worked. Now, I wanted his take on it too. And I would explain why I thought this worked. And he loved all the places. And then we had other things that weren't baked yet. And I said, we haven't found this yet, or we'll look at it together, or here are two that are, you tell me which one you like better. And we would talk about it. And then inherently it would just be, you start talking about shots, not like this is what we have to do, but just go visually look at it this way and walking it and going, look, that's cool. Look at that, kind of thing. And so it's fun. I let it kind of build a little bit. And now I'm to the stage where I will make a very rough shot list with a God's eye view drawing that looks like a blueprint for me, because that's how my brain works spatially. And, and it's, for me, it's almost always single camera. I mean, occasionally, I've got a courtroom in this thing I'm about to do, so I'll probably have another camera in there just for grids. But for mostly it's single camera. And I like to think of the math. I enjoy that part of the process. And then having discussions with John. And it's never, if you start asking me technical questions, you would find out very quickly that I know enough to be trouble, and that's about it. I'm not the director who's going to come in and go, put a 17 on a sandbag 40 yards from here over. That's not me. And it served me well, because I like to talk with John the same way I talk to the actors, the same way I talk to Tommy Newman or Carter Burwell, the composers. I don't do what you do. Here's what I want to feel.
Right.
So, if it's John, I can go, I want to feel the landscape on this. I want it to be little figures, and I want it to be low. And then he can go put a 17 on a sandbag. And I can go, okay, bring it back 10 yards. No, perfect.
Yeah.
And I think that, because, the last thing a composer wants is, I think we need to add a cello. It's like, it's not that. It's like, it's really, you can talk to composers that way. And some of the movies you've done have had Carter and Tommy as composers, and they're both pretty magical and amazing, and they're fun to work with in very different ways. But saying to them, it's just kind of like, it's really lovely and sweet. Should there be a hint of bittersweet? Should something tug at me just a little? Just asking, not saying what instrument, not saying I'm right, I'm just asking. And then they kind of leap on that. And it's the same with an actor. And I think it's the same for me, visually is the first representation of how you feel. When you see a frame, you're telling a story, our mind's already going. We're looking at it, and we've made a choice whether we want this to be, is it voyeuristic? Are we there? Do we want to go a longer lens? Most of the time, with John and I, we're right down the middle on the lenses, and find lenses we like for a movie and kind of stick to them. There may be the occasional one that's, a little different, but for the most part, that's it. I'm not good enough to show off with a camera. I'm not good enough to think about all those things and doing all that stuff. And there are people that are great at it, and love working it. I just kind of want to capture what makes me
the story
feel.
Yeah.
What makes me feel.
Yeah.
So anyway.
That's the way I think you should do it. But,
I think, for me, your best your best films are character studies too. I mean, it's interesting that, The Little Things or The Highwaymen. The Highwaymen was really interesting,
And the
wasn't
founder, too. Yeah.
And The Founder, which was quite different because it's kind of like comedic. It's almost like a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah.
I know. It's kind of surprising watching that coming from you. So we can't go on without mentioning the Alamo, which must have been quite an experience to do a film with so many characters and such a responsibility because you're a Texan, but somehow it just didn't fit.
Yeah, it's I still think about that movie a lot because
I bet
going back to The Rookie, which you talked about getting a job that I didn't think I had a chance of getting, and coming off that and having Ron Howard just dropping out of the Alamo that he wanted to do as an R-rated movie, and he had Russell Crowe attached to Sam Houston. And Ron, actually, who I know, had sent me the script way back when and said, "You're from Texas. Would you read this script and tell me what you think about it?" Because, when you're from Texas, you are taught the Alamo from, sixth grade. You have a whole year on the Alamo. It's crazy. So you grow up with it. I mean, you have a coonskin cap and you're in the backyard running around, and but I love the story because it's so misunderstood, and all the different movies about it had been just so historically wrong. And I know that it wasn't just about making a historical movie, but I thought the historical aspects that were true were really fascinating. That it was this was a Mexican Civil War. And there were people with brown skin on both sides of the walls. And there was a dictator who had started out as a duly elected president and served 2 terms and then said, "You know what? I think I want to stay," which sounds a little familiar these days sometimes. But I think this is a good gig. I want to keep it, and I'm going to be a dictator. And so, and Texas wasn't the only state of Mexico that was having trouble with taxation without representation, which is how the United States came about, and the Tea Party and all that stuff. So these are things that we've lived through and continue to live through. But I was fascinated by that and the fact of Texas being its own state, and so I learned a whole lot. So anyway, I gave Ron my notes because he wanted to do it kind of in the same way I did. But they came to me because he said, "I got to make it R." And they said it has to be PG-13 because we want young people to see this and all that. They want more money, let's be honest. And so they came to me, Dick Cook came to me and said, "I'd love for you to direct it." And it's like, it was one of those things where there was a million reasons not to, but I couldn't say no. And I have never had more fun making a movie. I mean, there was a day that we fed 4,000 people. We built 60 acres of physical sets. They don't do it. They'll never do it again. That was the last time this would be done. San Antonio, my father's hometown of San Antonio, existed as it did in 1836 for him to come and visit. It was one of those things when I was trying to get actors, to say, we would offer it and say, you got to come to Austin and go visit the set we're building. And, Billy Bob Thornton came down, and you take them out there and they just go, "I'm in." It was just so, it was so amazing. It was just, there was no way anybody was going to say no if I could get them down there. But looking back, I ended up pushing against the R and trying to get up to the line. It just was frustrating because I wanted it to be more violent, not for violence sake, but because it was a bloody battle and you want it to be. And I'm the person who's saying it should be realistic historically. Well, it should be realistically filmically too.
Yeah.
And I found myself in a quandary. Also, I found that, and they were lovely people to work with and all that Disney, but I found that I've learned a valuable lesson, which is make sure that you're making the same movie as the people who are paying for it. And they will say up front that they agree with everything you just said. You've got to dig harder, because I think that what they were trying to do was 9/11 had just occurred, within the last 2 or 3 years. And there was this rise of patriotic fervor. And they were like, they wanted it to be very kind of pro-American and that kind of stuff. And I said, well, I'm not saying make that movie, but it's not the Alamo if you're going to be historically correct. And so little by little, then they start trying to dig in and can we add this? Can we add this? Can we add this? And then you get to post-production, which was as good as production was, post-production was kind of a nightmare because I tested my cut of the movie, which was 20 minutes longer than what came out. And I tested it the same week that Peter Weir tested Master and Commander. And they tested the same score. Now, one reaction was, look, historical dramas, they don't test all that well. It's just what it is. So with Peter's movie, and I'm not equating quality or anything, I'm just saying both historical dramas coming out there roughly the same time, and they're tested the same week, I believe. And one was like, it's fabulous, finish your movie, and the other one was, oh my God, what are we going to do? And it became like all hands on deck to fix this problem instead of staying the course and making it better, So anyway, I learned a lot, and hopefully only repeat those every other movie instead of every movie now. So,
I mean, I think I'm right in saying it's the only movie you've done with so many characters. And what surprised me about the version of the Alamo that came out, it really hardly addressed Sam Houston or Santa Anna as characters, and suddenly which is sort of weird because that's what it was about.
Completely weird because it was supposed to be, yes, it was the three of them, and there are scenes cut from Santa Anna, but more importantly, I think Dennis Quaid did a lot of work. Sam Houston was a fascinating guy. He was a guy that he was a big, boisterous drunk, and who had lived with the Cherokee. God, I can't remember which tribe of Native Americans, but he lived with, I believe, Cherokee, spoke Cherokee, took a Cherokee wife. I mean, that was who Sam Houston was. He went and did that for like 6 years and then came back and rose to power again politically. So he was a fascinating character that and so that all had to go. And then there was some Santa Ana stuff. So I agree with you. I mean, I think the one is just 20 minutes longer is a far superior film. I understand that now they're going to there's a big Texas historical museum that they have that I don't know if it's built yet or not, but they're going to make their own Alamo film. And they got, and yes, and it'll just be shown in there. So I don't know how long it'll be or anything, but they got Taylor Sheridan's going to do it. And I don't really know Taylor, but I really hope that they don't kind of whitewash the truth of this, which is, my two favorite characters growing up were Davy Crockett and Juan Seguin. They were, they fought side by side for very different reasons. And Juan Seguin was from a prominent family who said, we're getting no help and we're paying all these taxes and we hate the dictator. So we're against the dictator. And I just thought that was fascinating to me. But I mean, it's at some point you get beaten down. In that earlier in your career, I think too, you're beaten down. You go, all of you smart people think I'm wrong, so I must be wrong. So I didn't have the power, didn't have the strength of my own conviction. And hopefully I've gotten some more backbone since then.
Yeah, but it also teaches you, and I mean, we all go through those kind of experiences and come out with a lot of knowledge, to use.
I never got, I mean, yes, it hurt. I'm not going to, nobody likes, I don't like the fact that Disney lost a bunch of money. I don't like the fact that, that critically it was not received well. The fact that, all those things. That said, I just kept going. And then the nice thing was, it was like, if I were just a director at that point, I'm sure I would have been in director jail, and not give it up. But I always had writing to do. So I just jumped in and kept writing and doing that. I remember the LA Times did a piece when I did The Blind Side, and they said, well, you were in director jail. I go, was I? I had no idea. I was writing and I was getting paid to write. So, it was a very cush jail cell if it was, because I was getting paid very nicely to write.
How do films actually get made? I'm really interested because the film film you wrote and directed that stars Denzel Washington and Rami Malek
Yeah.
and Jared Leto, called The Little Things,
Yeah.
is, I mean, I think it's a great little movie, but you wrote that in 1993, didn't you, or something, and it was only shot a few years ago.
Yeah.
So how does a film actually get made?
Well, I don't know how a film gets made other than sometimes they just kismet. I don't know. It's like all of a sudden, that was a movie that I pitched because when Steven decided not to do a Perfect World, he said, but let's find something else to do. Let's do this thing called God, what did he, I forget the name of that. Anyway, essentially he said, what we're going to do is, he goes, you're at Warner Brothers and I had a little deal at Warner Brothers. He said, do you like them? I like them. Yeah. Let's do something where you and I decide something for you to write and Warner Brothers pays for it and it'll be a Warner's movie if we do it. I said, oh, okay, great. That sounds great. And it was an idea that I had. I don't know. It was just an idea that I had that I fleshed out and I sent it to him, faxed it back in the day, like 20 pages of notes and things. And he looked at it on the weekend. He was shooting Schindler's List, I believe, at the time. And he said, this is just too dark for me. I'm already shooting a movie that has a lot of darkness in it. And I go, no, I get it. So I wrote the script anyway. And then it had like 3 different directors attached. The first one was Warren Beatty was going to direct it. And then Dean Pariseau, and then Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito was going to direct it when he was directing movies. And so I would have meetings with him and all that. And we got so far as I still hate read-throughs. I won't do read-throughs with all the actors and stuff, because I think it's kind of like, it just makes zero sense to me. You have somebody reading stuff and then you have actors saying words. It's kind of like, what does somebody say? It's like singing a recipe. It makes no sense. Right. It nothing. Yeah, it's why.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to pick it apart, and it's not visually interesting. And actors, and so we had a read through of The Little Things with Danny DeVito directing, and Danny, and I said, Danny, this is not a script that you have a read through for the studio and everybody. So get excited. No, it's a bad idea. And then I got Scott Frank, who's a dear friend of mine, to call, and who knew Danny, to call Danny and say, don't do this, Danny. Don't do it. And Danny goes, well, I always do it for my movies. We had this read through, and it was comical how poorly it went. It was De Niro, McConaughey, Lucy Liu. Who else were the actors? Really fine actors. And I'll never forget, De Niro was staying, we had it at a Malibu beach house. It may have been something DeVito has written or owned. I don't know. Anyway, De Niro was staying down 3 doors down, and we were waiting on him. Where's De Niro? And then he is swimming out in the ocean and comes in from the water he comes in, puts a robe on and comes in to do the read through. And the thing is that everybody's just like, oh, it's Robert De Niro. I mean, I was too. I was like, oh my God, it's Robert De Niro. I can't believe he's here reading my script. This is unbelievable. And he's there. And the thing is he reads so quietly and his head down. And so every other young actor then decided that must be what a star does. And so McConaughey was reading so quietly that nobody could hear a thing. So what was already going to be a boring read was a pall over the room.
And it's De Niro in his bathing suit, and it's actually a film about a serial killer.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds really bizarre, right?
Yeah. But anyway, so I forgot about it, and Mark had always been attached to it as a producer, and or became attached. Anyway, he was involved in it. He kept bringing it up. He goes, "You should direct it. You should direct it." And I had little kids at the time, and I get so kind of into whatever the subject matter is I'm doing that it's just it's just I go, that's a very dark place for me to live when I'm directing, and I've got little kids, and I don't want to bring any of that home, you know. And so then the kids went off to college and were off on their own. And Mark said, "Now you don't have any excuses if we can get it made." And then and it was magical. It was like in 2 weeks, all of a sudden, we had 3 Academy Award winners. And I go, "Oh, how did this happen?" And it was weird. Wow. It was weird because I wrote it. I remember when I wrote it, and then 7 came out, and I love 7. I love 7. But it made my heart hurt a little bit because I went, Oh, it's, I hadn't seen, I wrote it before 7, but 7 exists. So anyway.
Do you think it's getting harder to make those kind of movies? Or movies like The Founder,
Yeah, The Founder was its own special case. I mean, look, adult dramas are a dying breed in some ways. I mean, it depends on, I mean, you work with people that have earned this. They can kind of do more of what they want to do at a certain budget level and things. I haven't gotten that. The movies that I want to do, I end up having to really pare down and take a third of my salary. And the movie I'm doing now, I've worked on 5 years for free. I've done 14 drafts for free of this movie because I want to do this. So I think it's just hard to get an adult drama done. And, and this one is about the young attorney who was the first one who took Monsanto to trial over pesticides and Roundup. And now we're seeing on Monday, the Supreme Court is hearing stuff. So the ramifications of this little trial were huge. And I just always wanted to tell the story, but everybody's afraid of it, and I understand it.
Right.
I understand that. So, but it's hard, but those are the ones that give me joy. So I don't know how any movie gets made. It seems like there's certainly been a contraction. I don't know if you feel it, you guys feel it too, a contraction in the amount of content, as they would call it, being produced. And, because with COVID, all of a sudden we had this happening, a big boon, because everybody wanted streaming material and content. And so lots of people got involved in guilds and things like that. We had a whole bunch of young writers who came they were in writers' rooms, whereas they probably would have been before an assistant in a writer's room. So all of a sudden they're in the guild, and then they're getting health benefits and things like that. And then you have a downturn like we've had. And so that's why, the negotiations for all the guilds this time are very much about healthcare, because then you've got all these people who are going, now I'm out of work. I had work and now I'm out of work and I still need healthcare and we're still paying. So anyway, sorry for that curveball, but
no. I'm also interested why you're shooting in Germany. Is it?
Me too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I've read about a couple of people shooting in Germany recently, where the stories are actually set in the United States. So what's the reason? Purely budget?
Yeah, yes, it is purely budget. I mean, Roger, what would you expect? It's a true story set in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Well, of course, you shoot at Munich and Cape Town, right? It makes perfect sense.
Definitely, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you get to travel. Cape Town's nice. But...
Yeah. No, they're both lovely. It's not that. What happened was just we couldn't afford, because Netflix said we'll make the movie, but nobody flies around in the Cape, so we're stuck at this number, which is not a high number. And I mean, to the point that I mean, we're getting an amazing cast because of the content. I mean, it's like one actor told me, this isn't one you do for your accountant, this is one you do for your soul. So it's not about the money. And then we have a favored nations deal where the actors are all making the same. And I took a third of what I get paid to direct a movie, yada, yada, yada. Everybody, Schwartzman cut his fee in half. So everybody's kind of in it for the right reasons. And it does add like an esprit de corps, I will say. But it's gotten harder and harder. And Munich, we had the producer that was on it who brought it to me. It's from Munich. But we were looking at Prague, Budapest, but the thing is that it's just everybody's in Eastern Europe, because, I mean, if you look at the line for transportation alone, between Munich and not even Los Angeles, but Atlanta, it was something like $1.5 million difference, which on a $27 million movie is a lot of money.
Wow. Yeah.
That was just one line of the budget. So, and we ended up not going to Budapest because, the political stuff going on there. And we hadn't gotten in line for whatever the rebates things were. And it was a little unsure about when you would get your money back. And they knew Munich and there is a rebate, and they knew how to hit the right number of days and then go to Cape Town, which is just, it doesn't have rebates, but has incredibly inexpensive labor. Now, the crews are great down there. I mean, in my experience, the crews in Cape Town are exceptional. But it's just, it doesn't call a day. 1 day in Los Angeles, you can get 3 days in Cape Town. Same price.
Wow.
So anyway.
Mm.
So something needs to change.
No kidding. No kidding. Yeah.
You've also done some writing for television. How does that differ?
Yeah. Would you ever direct for television?
I mean, because we did talk with Scott Frank because we think what he did, for instance, with Department Q is amazing.
Yeah.
But he wrote, directed, he did it all. But, just the character development and being able to do that, having the time to do that. What is your opinion on that?
My opinion is Scott does it correctly. You can't. I talked to Ryan Johnson and Scott a lot about before I did this latest TV thing, which I don't regret at all, even though we didn't get a second season. I had a really wonderful time doing it. But the way to do it, honestly, is because Ryan had a successful show that, he thought, oh, I'll just drop in every once in a while and direct an episode. And he said it takes more time than you think. Scott said, just bite the bullet and do it all yourself. And, and especially if but you can do that if it's, if it's 8 episodes, it's Queen's Gambit, it's, whatever, those kind of things. You can do it where you can write them all and do it, and you shoot like one big long movie. And that's the way to do it. I mean, I prefer movies, even though I have to say the notes situation with studios has gotten more like TV. But TV, my God, I feel so horrible and sorry for them, all the executives in TV, because they live with a dread fear, and they wake up with a cold sweat at night, thinking of somebody sitting on their couch with an iPhone in one hand and a remote in the other. And so every note you get is coming from a position of fear. What if the audience doesn't understand this? What if they've gone to get a beer and come back? What if? When the truth is, the shows that are really good and that we watch, but we watch them because we're entertained in a way that's not repetitive and all those things. But they're looking, can you just give us a real solid C? And that's not their taste. These are smart people who like the same shows that we like. They just also have jobs, and they know that they're trying to get, especially in the case of AMC, it's all about streamers. They've got a linear channel that, not a lot of people get. So Talamasca, when you come to Munich and when you're in London, everybody had seen the show. Everybody was asking me about the second season because it was put on Netflix wherever AMC wasn't streaming. So in the States, it was the weirdest deal, because over here, having people go, oh, I loved it. What's going to happen? Tell me what happens in the second season. And I said, there's no second season. And they were like, why? Because it was #1 for Netflix in all these countries in Europe. But in America, nobody never heard of it.
Wow.
So anyway, and we didn't get the subscriptions that they needed to have. And look, it's their business, and I don't blame them if that's what it comes down to, subscriptions. I don't blame them for canceling it. I just, I wish the situation were different. But I ain't no good at TV, it seems. So I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of times too, the way they do TV is a little crazy with changing the directors and changing the DPs, that format. I don't see. And then you end up with the actors having to tell them, no, my character wouldn't do that. And it all gets confusing. Well, and I think you see it.
No, and that's why when I told him, when I pitched Talamasca, Mark Johnson came as Mark Johnson, and he came to me and he said, are you an Anne Rice fan? And I said, I've read one book. I read Interview with the Vampire way back when, like everybody else, And he said, well, that's good, because this isn't based on a book, but AMC has bought 18 books from her library, and they've got 2 shows that Mark's producing. They're very good, Interview with the Vampire and Mayfair Witches. And he said they're looking to do a 3rd one, and it's about this outfit called the Talamasca, which is mortals who keep track of the immortal world. And so because it's Mark, I said, well, send me what you've got from the different books. She mentioned it in several books, but didn't have a book about it. And I read it. And I said, I have a pitch, but you're not going to like it. I said, my pitch is I want to do Jean Le Carré, and if I have to throw a vampire in every once in a while, I will, you know? And so I pitched it to AMC, and they went, "That's great. It's got a little bit of a spy show, you know, and that kind of thing." Anyway, but I said up front, I go, "Look, I'll write 2 episodes, and if I can, I'll direct the first block, and I'll look at dailies. I'll stay involved as a producer and a creator. I will, but if this movie happens, then I'm going to go off and do it. They're in first position. Everybody knew that." So when the movie got pushed, then I ended up staying in Manchester, UK for 7 months. So I was on the set every day. Mark Lafferty, my co-showrunner, and myself, you know, thank God for Mark, who had a lot of experience in television, and we saw things the same way. But I could be in the editing room and he could be on the set, and then, you know, he could go on a scout and I could be on the, so there was never any of what you're talking about with, you know, a director trying to take us off, and we would go, "No," but we talked a lot about it, and I was on the set, and the actors could come to me, and the directors were fine with that. They were great. So
that's good.
it was a great experience. I wish we had a second season, but oh well.
Yeah.
Good.
Very good. Manchester must have been nice.
You know what? You were talking about going to places that you never thought you would go to.
Yeah.
That's one of them, because we went to Dublin, and again, we're just chasing money for the show. Let's call it what it is. They said, "Where do you want to set this?" And I just made this story up. It's not based on a book. And I said, the first episode is going to take place in New York, and the rest is going to take place in the East End of London. And that's where the Talamasca Mother House is, what they call the Talamasca headquarters in these different cities. It's in Far East London. And that's going to be it. And they said, "Why?" I said, "Because I like shooting in New York and London." You know, I'm making it up.
You asked me.
You asked me, yeah.
So you end up in Manchester.
So yes. Yeah. So cut to, we did get to shoot 2 days in New York, which helped sell the New York of it. But we went to, Manchester. I needed canals because I had a witch's coven on a houseboat in Maida Vale Canal. And I was because I said, "Look, if I have to have witches, I'm not going to have them in a house like every other show." I mean, my witches are kind of like, I don't know. It's like, it's kind of cultish and Lilith fair at the same time. And they live on a boat and they wear pink gowns because that's in the boat.
Oh, great.
And the boat's blue. You know, I don't know. I'm making it up, right? And so Manchester has a whole series of canals that come together underneath old Roman ruins, as well as Here Comes the Train right above it. Yeah. So it's really spectacular. And so you go, okay, well, I guess I'm in Manchester. And I kind of fell in love with Northern England. I mean, the people were really, really friendly. There's music everywhere. The crew was great. So I had a ball.
2 great football teams.
Oh, yes.
Oh boy, let's not go there.
Let's not go there.
Well, they're both were better this year than they were when I was there, because Man City had their little dive. They both were on a dive. But yes, you definitely feel that in the city. And I went to matches at both, and it was fun. A lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Wow. Oh, great.
Oh, well, this has been really great. We didn't even get to talk about The Highwaymen, which
we saw the other night, The Highwaymen. I really loved it. It's
good.
Kind of a pity more people haven't seen it and it's talked about. I suppose because it's not, because of Bonnie and Clyde, it perhaps didn't get the attention it deserved. I don't know.
It seems like I have a way with stuff I'm interested in kind of pissing people off before they see the movie. Because by the way, I love the movie Bonnie and Clyde.
Sure.
And people decided, they go, "Who's this asshole who's trying to piss all over Bonnie and Clyde?" I go, "No, I'm not at all. I'm just showing another side to it," which I thought was interesting. Like I said, it's like at the time, I think I said, somebody asked me what it's like, and I go, they were social media heroes, and that fascinating. I said, "Look, they're the Kardashians with guns." They was like, and the fact that Bonnie, when you look at pictures from her funeral, it's like 30,000 people showed up, and it's crazy. And I just liked that. I don't know. And then it was like, I don't want to see them. I said, I don't want to see them until you have to shoot them. And Clyde's, 5'3", maybe. Bonnie's 4'10". They're little children. And it's like, but the audience, I wanted the audience to be built up with like, we think we're going to see Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway.
Yeah, right.
And you go, oh no, it's just sadder. It's 10 times sadder. And we shot at the actual spot where the ambush occurred.
Yeah.
Which was creepy and really kind of great, because the actors came out and they go, this is weird in a good way. It was fun.
Yeah.
It's another example where the true story is so much more interesting than what Hollywood has told us before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think I like the movie. I like the movie. I like the movie a lot. So, and we had fun making it. So
good. Yeah. Well, we enjoyed watching it. So thank you, and thank you for doing this, because it gave us an excuse to watch all your movies. Yeah. Well, we had some really good times.
I could have spent the hour and 20 minutes just asking you questions about yours.
No.
But maybe someday we'll share a meal and I can, do that.
I certainly wouldn't share it on a recording.
If we're going to be honest and tell the good stories.
Maybe I was too honest. I probably won't work again. So.
No. Thought you were great.
Great.
I really appreciate you.
Yeah, it's been absolute joy talking to you. Thank you so much.
Nice talking to you guys. Thank you for including me. I really appreciate it.
If you'd like to sponsor the Team Deakins podcast, let us know at pod@teamdeakins.com. Thanks for listening. If you want more information and further discussion, check out the forums at www.rogerdeakins.com. Becoming a member is free, and you can ask follow-up questions there. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast for more new questions and topics. Also, check us out on Instagram at team.deakins. See you next time.